The day the bakery opened, the town square filled with a smell so sweet and nostalgic that people wept without understanding why. A slender sign, painted in curling silver letters, hung above the door. Vale Confections. Beneath it, in smaller script, a promise shimmered. Taste joy. Nothing about the storefront was extraordinary. Whitewashed brick, lace curtains, a bell that tinkled when the door swung inward, yet passers-by felt drawn as though invisible ribbons tugged them across the threshold. Some later insisted they'd walked in unwillingly, that something warm and effervescent had pushed from behind. But at the time no one resisted, because who would fight an invitation that smelled like childhood birthdays, snow day cinnamon rolls, and the hush of a parent's late-night lullaby all at once? Elena Boutin arrived 10 minutes before the grand opening, because punctuality ran in her blood. Her mother had kept clocks in every room, and Elena, left lonely after that mother's early death, found comfort in the ticking that parceled grief into measurable units. She told herself she'd come to the bakery out of simple curiosity, but she also knew tomorrow marked the 12th anniversary of her mother's passing. 12 years of methodical breathing, dressing, teaching at the local school, and going to bed exactly at 10. If something in the air promised joy, even borrowed joy, she wanted one taste. Inside, the cases glowed under rose-gold lights. Croissants were lacquered perfection. Eclairs gleamed like polished mahogany, and mounds of meringue resembled clouds parted by dawn. At the counter stood a woman whose silver streaks twined through wine-dark hair. Her eyes, one storm blue, one spring green, flitted over each customer as if measuring an invisible seam. When Elena reached the head of the line, the woman greeted her by name. "Elena, welcome," she said, voice low and ringing like a distant cello. Elena blinked, automatically checking her blouse for a name tag she never wore. "Have we met?" "Not yet." The woman tapped a small brass plate pinned to her dress. "Aurelia Vale, proprietor. But I read faces the same way others read handwriting." She extended a box lined with parchment. Inside lay a single round pastry she called a dawnling. "For you." Elena tried to protest, but Aurelia closed her hand gently around the box. "Your first taste is on the house." Outside, Elena sat on the stone ledge of the town fountain. The pastry's surface glimmered with granulated sugar, but when she tore it open, steam unfurled, scented with almond, lemon zest, and something unnameable, perhaps the color of sunrise itself. She bit in. The square changed. Sound, sight, temperature, everything sharpened. She felt her mother's arms again, weaving a crown of daisies for 6-year-old Elena. Felt the rough wool coat her mother had worn during December strolls. Heard the off-key whistle that always preceded hot chocolate. She tasted that safety, that utter certainty that the world loved her and always would. A laugh escaped her, a bright, startling bubble rising from depths she'd forgotten existed. When the pastry was gone, she licked sugar from her fingers, dizzy with wonder. She imagined running back inside, begging Aurelia for every confection available, but prudence tugged her sleeve. Something so good must have a catch. And besides, 11 o'clock classes awaited at the elementary school. She walked away, still buoyant, half convinced the wind carried her. The hollow announced itself that evening while she graded spelling tests. It began as a vague ache behind her sternum, like hunger but not hunger. She brewed tea, misread an answer sheet, pushed back from her desk. The ache deepened into a cool void. Colors dulled, the apartment's ticking clocks grated instead of soothed. For an instant she felt she'd never again experience anything except bleakness, yet the memory of earlier joy remained incandescent in her mind's eye, taunting. She went to bed but slept poorly, waking twice soaked in tears whose source she couldn't identify. By Friday, half the town spoke of nothing except veiled confections. People queued before dawn. A local blogger wrote, "I ate a single apricot brioche and finally forgave my ex-husband. At the hardware store, Mr. Lagrange bought nails, While humming a Beatles tune no one had heard him sing since his wife's funeral 10 years prior. Elena overheard whispers in the staff lounge. One teacher claimed she tasted the moment her baby first gripped her finger. Another tasted the instant her stutter vanished in 9th grade. They smiled brighter than street lamps, but by afternoon Elena noticed grim shadows under their eyes. She avoided the bakery for 5 days. The hollow remained, a patient beast gnawing at her ribs. Nothing filled it, not spinach quiche from the cafe, not chocolate ice cream, not meditation apps. At dawn on Saturday she surrendered. If she couldn't banish the sorrow, she would drown it briefly in another flare of joy. Aurelia greeted her with the same soft authority. "You've come to understand our rhythm," she said, packaging a pear and rosemary galette. This time Elena paid the price steep enough to sting. As the line moved, Elena glimpsed the faces behind her, eager, luminous, and threaded with something desperate. She stepped outside, and the first bite detonated a memory of graduating college, the sea of caps, her mother's face still alive in the stands, though Elena knew that day had occurred 3 years after her death. Logic protested, but the sensation overwhelmed dissent. She floated home. The hollow returned before evening, larger. Now it radiated cold along her collarbones. She found herself refreshing the bakery's website, reading descriptions of pastries like Solstice Sablé and First Kiss Fondant. Each paragraph conjured bright echoes of future joys she hadn't even lived. She wept again. Sunday morning she forced herself to study at the public library. At noon she emerged to find a commotion. An ambulance idled before Vale Confections. Paramedics wheeled out a pale teenager who clutched an empty pastry box and murmured, "It was so beautiful," before slipping into unconsciousness. Elena's chest tightened, not with the hollow, but with concern sharp enough to cut. She approached a paramedic she recognized, Simon, who'd coached her in community volleyball. "Overdose?" she asked. Simon wiped sweat from his brow. "Blood pressure collapsed. Labs clean, heart fine. It's like he quit wanting to breathe." "That can't be a diagnosis." "I know." He looked toward the bakery. "But you should have seen the line." As soon as the stretcher came, half fled, other half kept eating while they watched. He shuddered. "There's something wrong here." After the ambulance left, Elena crossed the cordon and slipped inside Vale Confections. The crowd had thinned. Glass shelves looked ravaged, only crumbs remaining. Aurelia stood alone behind the counter, wiping tongs with a cloth embroidered in roses. She appeared unsurprised by Elena's abrupt arrival. "I was expecting you." "What happened to that boy?" Elena demanded. "He experienced too many joys in rapid succession, a system shock." "Your pastries hurt people. They reveal people," Aurelia corrected. "They taste the purest moments of who we are. The sorrow afterward merely exposes what's been there all along." Elena slammed her palms atop the glass, rattling trays. "That sorrow grows. It's not natural." "Neither is distilled rapture." Aurelia moved closer. "Yet you returned." Elena opened her mouth, but truth clogged her throat. Yes, she had come back twice, and even now the scent of warm vanilla teased her, promising respite. She swallowed. "Why does the hollow get worse every time?" Aurelia's mismatched eyes softened. "Because each pastry contains a finite fragment of joy, and the space it creates afterward must be filled. Feed the emptiness with living joys, real ones. It diminishes. Neglect it, and it yawns wider." "That sounds like addiction dressed up as philosophy." "Addiction compels escape from pain," Aurelia said. "I offer confrontation with it." A bell rang as another customer stepped in, and Aurelia excused herself. Elena left, shaken. That night she searched online for references to Valet Confections, but found no previous locations, no business registry, though the bakery's immaculate website registered 5 months earlier through anonymous channels. Local officials claimed all permits had checked out. She scrolled through photographs, glossy pastries cradled by white-gloved hands, patrons smiling in soft focus. No negative comments, no mention of hollowness. School reopened Monday after a holiday break, and Elena tried to lose herself in routines, phonics drills, multiplication tables. But the children's laughter pierced her, as skewed as if by the children's laughter pierced her, reminding her of what the dawnling had simulated and what real life now seemed to lack. By lunchtime, she sat in the teacher's restroom, hugging her knees. The hollow had become a crater. On her phone, she drafted an email resigning effective immediately. She hovered over send before deleting. She imagined returning to the bakery and buying a dozen pastries, staining Joyce back to back until the hollow was an ocean that swallowed her. Tears smudged mascara she'd forgotten she wore. A knock at the door, Principal Diaz's voice. "Elena, you all right?" She inhaled. "Fine." She stood, wiped her face, opened. Diaz surveyed her but said nothing except, "Staff meeting at 3. She nodded automatically and went through the motions until dismissal. At the meeting, Diaz announced that 1/3 of the faculty had called in sick, several without notice. He assigned heavier workloads. Murmurs rippled. Elena recognized names, colleagues she'd seen in the bakery queue. Her hollow pulsed. Afterward, she marched to Vale Confections. Twilight draped the square. The bakery glowed like a lantern. Lines were shorter now, not for lack of demand, but scarcity. Stock ran out earlier each day. Inside, shelves were half empty. Aurelia arranged pistachio eclairs, whispers of exhaustion showing at her temples. "I need to know how to stop this," Elena said without introduction. Aurelia clasped her hands. "I can teach you to bake." "I'm not talking about pastry. I mean the hollow. People are suffering. And still they choose." Aurelia motioned to the remaining customers. "Choice is sacred. Not when you engineer craving. There was an ambulance yesterday. People overdose on alcohol, on mountain climbing, on romance," the baker replied. "Shall we outlaw those?" "What are you, Aurelia?" Elena's voice trembled. "Some kind of witch?" The woman laughed softly. "Old words for old understandings. I am a courier. Joy and sorrow are twins lost at birth. I reunite them so mortals remember they share a spine. I don't care for riddles. Close the bakery. That would solve nothing. Another hunger would replace this one." Aurelia cupped Elena's cheek suddenly, fingers warm, steady. "Your hollow is cavernous because your life calcified around grief. Let it break, you'll see." Elena stepped back. "I won't be your experiment. Then be your own." Aurelia lifted a small paper bag from beneath the counter. "Take this, no charge. Return tomorrow and tell me what filled the space afterward." Elena accepted despite herself. The bag was light, smelling of cardamom and clover honey. She fled. At home, she placed the bag on the kitchen table and stared. If she ate it, she'd ride a supernova, then crash darker. If she didn't, she'd endure the current hollow anyway. She brewed tea, paced. At midnight, she unfolded the bag. Inside, a small square of golden pastry dusted with pink salt. Aurelia had labeled it raw heart baklava. Elena closed her eyes, bit. Joy came differently this time. Not a memory, but a possibility. Standing on a windswept cliff, arms outstretched, laughing at a storm, while someone she hadn't met yet held her steady. The image pulsed with life, but unlike earlier visions, it felt incomplete, awaiting her participation. Tears streaked her face, gusts of salt and sweetness colliding. She finished the baklava, breath hitching, and waited for sorrow to surge. It did, but smaller, as though the pastry itself encouraged balance. She slept deeply. Morning sun warmed her skin, and though the hollow murmured, it didn't roar. She showered, skipped makeup, walked to school early. The world still looked muted compared to pastry-bright memory, but real bird song threaded the air, and she let herself smile. During lunch break, she joined her students at recess, something she rarely did. She pushed young Victor on the swing, taught Maya how to clap a skipped rope rhythm. Their laughter, not simulated, echoed summer. The hollow shrank further. She hadn't visited the bakery. She wondered if this was what Aurelia meant by feed it with living joys. After school, she found Diaz clutching his temple. "I can't cover these classes," he muttered. "Substitutes unavailable." "I'll take Miss Parker's reading group," Elena volunteered. "Just this week." Relief flooded his face. She surprised herself, yet felt light giving help. Over the next days, she practiced new rituals, visited the nursing home to read aloud, tried salsa lessons, allowed a friendly barista to walk her home discussing constellations. Each genuine experience patched the hollow with threads of presence. The craving dulled, though never vanished entirely. The town, however, frayed. Ambulances came thrice more. Businesses reported absenteeism. Mayor Celeste convened a council meeting to address the joy pastry crisis. Citizens argued. Some demanded closure. Others claimed the treats were private liberty. Protesters camped outside Vale Convections waving placards, "Our sorrow, our choice." Elena attended, sitting in the back. When testimonies opened, people described euphoria, followed by lifelessness so acute they contemplated self-harm. One mother shook as she recounted her toddler finding crumbs beneath her couch and crying for more happy cake. The baker herself arrived, serene among chaos. When allowed to speak, Aurelia stated, "Joy and sorrow are allies, not enemies. Do not muzzle either. Eat responsibly." Booing erupted. The meeting adjourned with no resolution, but rumors of legal injunction flared. That evening, Elena walked to the bakery as stars seeded the sky. Police tape crisscrossed, the door temporarily shut, pending investigation. Yet inside, lights glowed dimly. Elena hesitated, then slipped through the alley to the side entrance she'd noticed during deliveries. It stood ajar. She entered a kitchen fragrant with burnt sugar. Aurelia knelt before a copper kettle, stirring thick syrup. She didn't look up. "They'll seal me out tomorrow," she said. "Tonight I finish one last batch." "Why let them close you?" "Balance tilts too far. Pendulum must swing." Aurelia rose, wiping her hands. "Someone must tend the other arc when it returns." Elena examined racks, trays of unbaked pastries, shaped like teardrops, moons, broken crowns. Will people suffer worse once you're gone? Some will starve of sensation. Some will discover their own recipes. Elena offered Elena a wooden spoon to lick. The syrup tasted of thunderstorm petrichor, first pages of a beloved novel, and the hush after saying yes. Elena set down the spoon. "Teach me." Aurelia's eyes brightened. "Now? Now. If you disappear, someone should know how to wield this responsibly." So the lesson began. She learned proportions, measured not in grams but heartbeats. Stir until memory surfaces, fold until longing softens. They worked through the night, shaping dough, infusing filling with shredded laughter, glazing with distilled sunset. Aurelia's hands moved like orchestral conductors. Elena imitated, surprised when the mixture responded to her own pulse. During rest breaks, Aurelia told fragments of her origin. Born centuries earlier in a high-campy monastery where monks brewed nectar from weather. Apprenticed to an alchemist, wandered wars stitching hope into soldiers' rations. Each age eventually rejected her gifts, blaming them for suffering that had always been there. She carried on anyway, believing some must taste a full spectrum to live awake. At dawn, birdsong wove through the open window. Trays cooled. Each pastry shimmered. Aurelia boxed several. "These are yours. Share only with consent. Where will you go? Wherever joy starves." She hugged Elena, a warmth that brimmed but didn't burn. "You fed your hollow with living threads. Remember how." Footsteps sounded outside. Law enforcement arriving early. Aurelia lifted a trapdoor Elena hadn't noticed leading to a tunnel beneath flagged tiles. "They'll find me gone. Stay or leave, your path forks now." Elena watched her disappear into darkness, the trapdoor sealing silently. Fists pounded the front entrance, a voice shouting, "Police!" Elena exhaled, wiped flour from her cheeks, and opened the service door. Officers barged past, searching. They found no proprietor, only a single teacher calmly boxing pastries for disposal, per the court order. She surrendered them without protest, except the batch Aurelia had granted, hidden swiftly in her tote. Outside, dawn painted the square peach and rose. Citizens gathered to witness closure. Some cheered, others sobbed. Elena walked through them unseen, as though new weightlessness cloaked her. At the school that afternoon, after art period, she invited her reading group to sit in a circle. She produced the box. "These are special," she told the children. "They reveal memories or hopes. If you taste one, you'll feel wonderful for a bit, then maybe sad. To keep balanced, you must promise to talk about both feelings. Agree?" The children glanced at each other and nodded, solemn despite their age. She broke each pastry into thumbnail pieces, scant tastes. They closed their eyes, chewed. Small smiles blossomed, followed by frowns, then thoughtful silence. Elena guided them in sharing. Victor said he'd tasted the day his dog would come home from surgery. Afterward, he felt scared it might not happen. Elena helped him craft a letter to the veterinarian. Maya tasted the memory of her grandmother teaching her to braid, then missed her fiercely. The group decided to organize a visit to Maya's grandpa that weekend. Each sorrow sprouted action, not paralysis. When class ended, Elena sat alone, noticing her hollow-out quiet cave where hearth fires crackled, no longer devouring, merely spacious. Joy flickered, sorrow echoed, each giving the other shape. She understood, perhaps for the first time, the meaning of appetite. That night she placed Aurelia's remaining pastries in her freezer. Occasionally she would share one responsibly. More often she would bake new recipes of her own. Lavender acceptance scones, empathy tortoise, resilience brioche. She'd fail sometimes, batches burning or from ending too sharp, but each attempt stitched her more firmly to living. Rumor held that Vale Confection's shuttered storefront would become a boutique or a tax office. The sign remained for months, letters peeling, promise still faintly visible. Taste, joy. Some evenings children swore they smelled caramel drifting from the cracks, but inspectors found nothing. Elena walked past often, feeling neither craving nor regret, only gratitude for the complicated aftertaste life now carried. Occasionally, when moonlight hit glass just right, she thought she saw Aurelia's reflection beside her, mismatched eyes twinkling, and she would nod a greeting, then continue down the lamplit street toward whatever unbaked dawn awaited.